Hey everybody, I'm Lindsay Adler, and I'd like to take you through a photo deconstruction. I want to share one of my photos and share the inspiration behind it, the lighting, and the post-processing so you can see what it takes to make one of these images. So let me start by showing you what the final product looks like. So this is where I ended up with the photograph. Now my original inspiration was the fact that I really love kind of hard light, black and white vintage photos. I love when they have these really crisp shadows, blown out highlights. It's so timeless and it never ages. So I love to shoot models like that, especially if I'm going to do something creative later on in the shoot. I like to start with something a little bit more clean and timeless. But how can I make clean and timeless also creative? So that was the basis of creating this image. So this is the final result, but I want to take you behind the scenes and we'll take a look at the lighting as well as the gear that was being used. So here's a behind the scenes shot. Now in this image, there are two lights being used. The main light here has no modifier at all. All it is a hard bare bulb. And so what that's going to do, it's going to give me really crisp, defined shadows. When you use a hard light source, imagine being lit by the sun. If you look at the shadow cast by the nose, it's razor sharp. So with hard light, any shadow is going to be defined. I'm going to use this to my advantage. So I've got my main light as the bare bulb. And then, so my subject doesn't blend in with the background, I used a second light on the background. It's a 10-degree grid. And what the 10-degree grid does is instead of evenly lighting the entire background, it gives me kind of a gradient. It focuses the light and gives me a glow. So I think it adds a little bit more visual interest to the shot. So those are my two light sources. But now here's the creative part. Knowing that I can cast a shadow on my subject, and because it's hard light, I'll be able to actually see the shadow, I add a piece of cinefoil. Cinefoil, all it is, it's black tin foil. It's actually made for putting on lights. And the closer I bring that tin foil, that cinefoil, to my subject, the more defined the shadow will be. So basically you can see that my subject, that flag, is only a couple inches from her face. If it were further back, closer to the light, the shadow wouldn't be as defined. So now, taking a look at that black cinefoil flag, I actually lined it up so that it would go right down the middle of her forehead, down the middle of her nose, and I thought that it made a really interesting graphic quality to the image. Now real quick about my camera gear. I'm shooting with a Canon 5D Mark IV with a 70-200 lens. It's one of my go-to lenses, especially for tight beauty shots like I'm capturing in this example. I shot at 1/200 of a second, f8, ISO 100. I don't need to have a narrow depth of field in this shot. It is meant to be graphic, so shooting at f8 is going to work perfect for that. All of the strobes used in this shot are ProPhoto D1s and D2s and pretty simple modifiers. So that's one look behind the scenes, but I actually just want to give you just one other angle. Here's another angle, and on the left-hand side, you can actually see the background light a little bit better. You can see the grid on there. And I have a V-flat set up. And the reason I have a V-flat is so if you look at the main light, that's a bare bulb. What happens is that light spreads everywhere. And I want dark shadows, especially on the subject's jawline. So if that main light bounced off of the white wall on the left-hand side over there, what happens is it would bounce back like a reflector and fill in the shadow. So the V-flat is there, not for the background light, but actually to prevent the bounce of light on the walls. So I've got my background light, my main light, and then of course, again, you see another perspective of the flag, and I'm just having my subject outside of the frame, just a couple of inches away from my subject to give me those crisp lines. So let's go back and take a look at what was done in post with this shot. So let's look at the straight out of camera shot. Straight out of camera, so the raw file that I captured looks something like this. So it's obviously not black and white yet. The skin tones are not blown out. They're kind of average skin tone, middle tonalities. You can see the highlight in the background. And so what I did is in Lightroom, I processed that file. So what I did is I changed it to a high contrast black and white. So all you see here was 100% done in a raw processor, no Photoshop yet. And so what I did is I increased the contrast, changed it to black and white, and I popped the highlights on the skin so that they would go pure white. And that's what gives me that vintage look. So that looks great. But then a few things that I thought were bothersome. One of the things that I don't like is I actually decided I didn't like the ponytail anymore. I thought it messed up the clean lines of the shot. So we Photoshopped that out. Then I Photoshopped out the earrings. I think that makes it look too modern because in a vintage shot, nobody would actually have those piercings. The highlight in the bottom left-hand corner of the frame I found quite distracting because it's a big shadow and then there's a highlight. So it's that contrast that's drawing my eye. So I wanted to get rid of that. And then overall, I wanted to lengthen her neck. So I'm not transforming the shot. I'm just cleaning it up, helping focus the eye a little bit more. So to see the final retouch, it's just a much more clean shot. And I think when I look at my style and the way that I shoot, everything is clean and on purpose. So that was the idea behind my post-processing here. One more thing, as you look at this photo, you could look at this photo and have an idea of how it's done. So take a look, you can see, the main light, you can tell it's a hard light. Look at the shadow on the neck, how absolutely crisp that line is. It tells you that it's a hard light. And then you can see in the background how it's a glow. It's brighter in the middle and then it fades out to the edges. It tells you it's a grid and there's a light on the background for separation. And then of course, that crisp line down the middle of the nose tells you that the shadow is being cast by something, in this case, a piece of cinefoil. So for this photo deconstruct, I had an idea of something that was timeless, but also a little bit creative. And so the key to this is using hard light, not being afraid of hard light, and then using something to cast a shadow on the subject's face. If you'd like to see more of these photo deconstructions, subscribe to my YouTube channel.